Hi everyone, welcome to English for You. I'm Kat.
And I'm Elsie.
And it's December. You can't tell by the clothes I'm wearing, but maybe you can tell by the clothes you're wearing. And that means it's time for some Christmas stories. This is kind of a Christmas story today, but it's a little bit of a fable too.
Yeah, and it's written by Hans Christian Andersen.
Yes, he is the man who wrote The Little Mermaid. He's the man who wrote Little Matchstick Girl. He's written a bunch of different fairy tales that we all know and love, especially in the western part of the world. And this one is called The Fir Tree.
The fir tree. What kind of tree is this?
It's not a furry tree, I'll tell you that. It's
not F-U-R-Y.
It's F-F-I-R.
F-I-R, fir tree.
Yeah. So a fir is a kind of tree that they use a lot for Christmas trees.
Oh.
Yeah, so you'll see them a lot in people's houses. You'll also see forests full of them in colder parts of the world.
So they must be tall and strong, right?
Yeah, and they're very beautiful, and sometimes they smell really good. So we're going to learn about this fir tree, but this fir tree actually has kind of its own mind. And so because this is a fantasy story, it's a fairy tale, we're learning about the fir tree's life, and we're going to learn a lesson from it. So let's get into the article and look at the story and find out more.
Reading.
The Fir Tree. A young fir tree grew in a forest. It lived near many mighty giant trees, and it wished to be as tall as they were. Sometimes children would call it a pretty little tree. This made the fir tree sigh and feel anxious. Every year it grew bigger, but it was not satisfied. It didn't take pleasure in the warm sun, fresh air, or pleasant birds. In autumn, people cut down some of the tallest trees. Horses pulled them away on wagons. The fir tree wanted to know where they were going. A bird said it had seen ships with masts made of fir trees. The young fir tree longed to go on such exciting travels. However, a ray of sunlight told it, "Rejoice in your youth." When winter arrived, many young trees were cut down. Again, the fir tree wondered what would become of them. Birds said these trees would be brought into people's homes for Christmas and covered in beautiful decorations. The fir tree hoped for this future too.
All right, our article starts out by saying a young fir tree grew in a forest. So a fir,
So fir 代表就是冷杉。那我们这个故事的标题，这个字啊，这个中文字念是葱，葱树，也是用 fir 这个字来代表。
Yeah, and as we already said, it's a tall evergreen tree. And evergreen means it's one of those trees that it doesn't drop its leaves in the fall. It will always have its leaves, or more likely its needles, because fir trees have needles. And they can be kind of sharp to touch, but they look very beautiful and very fluffy. Yeah, so it's that kind of tree. So it lived near many mighty giant trees, and it wished to be as tall as they were. So it was near mighty giant trees. We already said this is a little fir tree. It's probably just a baby, and it lives near mighty trees. Now, mighty means having a lot of strength, a lot of power, or showing that kind of power, or that kind of might. You probably heard the word might, like, I might go to the store later, but might as a noun can be power and strength. So if you look at trees and they look mighty, it means they're very strong. They, don't bend a lot in the wind, and they have probably are a lot of years old. And you can also talk about other things. You can talk about people being mighty. They have big, strong muscles. You can talk about storms being mighty if they're very scary and big. Anything that has power and strength, you can talk about it as mighty. So for an example, the ocean storm was mighty, but the ship was strong enough to go through it.
Mighty 这个形容词呢，代表就是巨大的、威武的。那你看到前面有 M-I-G-H-T might， 刚 Kat 有提到一个很重要的地方哦。我们以前学的 might 都是助动词可能，好，不过这里啊 might 可以当名词用，代表就是 power 力量。所以课文说到这棵葱树在其他巨大的树木附近，那它呢就希望长得跟其他的树一样高。
So it wanted to be as tall as those big old trees. Well, I mean, give it a few hundred years. It probably will be. But apparently it wasn't happy to wait. Sometimes children would call it a pretty little tree.
Oh, pretty little tree.
Oh, what a pretty little tree.
Okay, but was the fir tree happy about that being called little?
No. I I think a lot of people, if you call them little, like, oh, Elsie, you're such a pretty little thing. Yeah, it doesn't make you happy. So, of course, this made the fir tree sigh and feel anxious. Ooh. Now, this is interesting because sigh is a verb that we usually use for people or animals because it's this. Trees can't exactly breathe in the same way that we do, but this is a fantasy, it's a fairy tale. So I think in its mind, the fir tree is going, "Aw, why do you call me little?" So sighing is taking in and letting out a long breath, and it shows that you're like bored, it shows you're disappointed, or maybe you're relieved, or maybe you're just enjoying your day and you're laying down and to sleep and you're like, that's a sigh. So, yeah. An example sentence could be, Mary sighed with relief when she realized her friends weren't mad at her.
好，所以 sighed with relief 那就是放松的叹一口气。sigh 这个动词代表叹气、叹息。过去式跟过去分词字尾直接加 ed 就好了。好，它是一个规则变化的动词。那这边说啊 this tree sighed and it was anxious.
Anxious, yeah. So it wasn't sighing with relief. It wasn't sighing because, oh, nothing's wrong. It's sighing because it's anxious. That means it's kind of nervous or afraid or worried, especially about what might happen, or you're feeling anxiety. When you feel anxiety, it's like your stress is so high that you feel just bad things are going to happen. I can't handle it. Oh, I feel really uneasy. Yeah, that kind of feeling. So, if children call me little, maybe I'll never get to be big. Maybe I'll always be little. Oh, what's wrong with me? That kind of feeling. So, an example sentence you could say, Dave was so anxious about his test that he couldn't sleep last night. You ever had that feeling before? Yeah.
Anxious 这个形容词呢，代表是焦虑的、不安的。那常见的用法有 be anxious about something， 好，那就是对某事感到焦虑。所以刚刚的那个例句，我们看到这样的用法，那再给同学们一个例句哦。I'm anxious about the upcoming job interview， 代表我对这个即将到来的面试感到焦虑。那 anxious 是形容词，刚刚提到的 anxiety 就是名词，焦虑感。
So it sighed, it was anxious. Children called it a pretty little tree. Every year it grew bigger. But it was not satisfied.
Oh, it was not satisfied. No. It was not happy.
No, it's not like, you go to the door in your house and you make a little notch to show how much you've grown. It would probably look at that and go, I'm not big enough.
Right, or it hasn't changed.
Yeah, but it didn't like its life. It wasn't satisfied. It didn't take pleasure in the warm sun, fresh air, or pleasant birds. It didn't take pleasure in those things. To take pleasure in something means to enjoy it, and you feel happy when you're doing it or when you're seeing it. For example, you might take pleasure in cooking, or you might take pleasure in the garden that you grow. So you can follow this with a verb or a noun.
Take pleasure in 后面加上 VING 代表你很乐于做这件事情 So we can take pleasure in doing a lot of things 像是呢我们可以说 He and his parents took pleasure in building this tree house and they planned to build another one 代表他们在盖这间树屋的时候呢是非常开心的那回到课文呢我们说到啊葱树它并不享受暖阳也不享受清新的空气也不享受令人愉悦的小鸟It didn't like all these things.
Yeah, it was just like, whatever. Yeah, sun, birds, meh, it's fine. Don't need it. It's not that great. If I'm taller, that would be great. But it says, in autumn, people cut down some of the tallest trees. Oh, that's interesting. They cut them down. Now, once you cut something down, you cut something so it isn't standing anymore or hanging anymore. You're usually talking about cutting plants. So if it's like a vine that's growing down here, you cut it down, you take it with you. Or if it's a tree, you cut it down and then you take the tree with you.
OK， 所以 cut down something 那就是砍倒，这边指的就是树木。秋天的时候呢，人们会砍倒一些高大的树木。So did this tree still want to grow bigger like those trees that just got cut down?
I guess. I mean, I don't know, but he's still observing what's happening to them anyway. So what happens to them after they're cut down? The story says horses pulled them away on wagons. All right, so they were on wagons. That's how people transported things back in the day, before we had cars. A wagon is a vehicle, and it has 4 wheels, and it's used for carrying heavy things, and it's used for carrying passengers, kind of like a car. But it doesn't have an engine. It's usually pulled by animals like horses or like oxen, which are really strong cows that are trained to pull a wagon. So for example, you could say the oxen pulled the wagon while the family sat inside to get out of the sun.
Wagon 指的是货运马车，那有时候也可能是牛拉的哈。那货运马车呢，载走了被砍下来的大树 ，they got taken away.
Exactly. And where did they go? The fir tree wanted to know where they were going. I wonder.
这棵葱树呢，他就想要知道说，那些被砍倒的大树们，他们被载到哪里
A little tree probably wondering, these big trees that get cut down, they're probably being taken to somewhere really cool.
Yeah, maybe they're going on a field trip.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to go on some travels. They're going to go on vacation. Then they're going to come back.
Yeah.
Nope, probably not. But a bird said it had seen ships with masts made of fir trees. Ah, okay. So they're being used to make masts. So a mast is that long pole on the top of a ship that supports the sail. So if you've ever seen a sailing ship with a big, long piece of wood up the top, that's probably a tree or once was a tree.
OK， 那在我们讲下去之前呢，我们先到 Language in Focus， 听听看今天的文法点咯。今天呢，我们要说的是过去完成式。那当我们要描述过去发生2个事件的时候啊，先发生的，好，就是第一个发生的事件，我们可以用过去完成式来表示。那后发生的就是用过去简单式就好了。这样子呢，你可以区别出这个发生时间顺序。那过去完成式的组成是一个主词加上 had 之后，再加上过去分词哦。So for example, Sam had worked at this restaurant for a long time before it shut down. Sam 在这间餐厅关门大吉之前呢，就已经在这边工作很长的一段时间。那再来第二个，过去完成式呢，还经常搭配 by the time 加上子句一起使用哦，表示到了点点点的时候。So for example, the train had already left by the time I got to the train station. 我到车站之前呢，火车就已经离开了。那再来第三个，要表示某事在过去持续了一段时间的时候，也可以用过去完成式，那常常就会与 for 加上一段时间，或者是 since 加上过去式或是过去时间来连用。像是呢 Evan had lived in the US for 2 years before he came back to Taiwan. 代表他回台湾之前啊，在美国住了2年的时间。那刚刚提到的 mast 代表的是船桅、桅杆。那课文说到呢，小鸟说啊，有看过有船的船桅是用葱树制成的。
So it has seen these ships of fir trees, that thing, and the young fir tree longed to go on such exciting travels. I want to go on a trip. So to go on something, it means to have the chance to travel. It means you're going on a journey. You could go on a business trip. You could go on a hunt. It's like basically you need a noun for some kind of adventure, and then you can go on it.
那 long to do something 代表是渴望做某事，这边的 long L-O-N-G 当做一个动词在使用哦。那年轻的葱树啊，渴望开始这么刺激的旅程。
So you can go on a trip. You can long to go on a trip. This is what this little fir tree feels. He really, really wants to go somewhere. However, a ray of sunlight told it, rejoice in your youth. Okay, so now the sun's talking. Not just the sun, but a ray of the sun. A ray is well, you might have heard it's a name for a boy, but it's also one of the lines of light that you can see coming from an object. Usually the sun, or usually maybe like a bright light bulb. If you're squinting your eyes, you can see rays coming from a light source. So we often talk about the rays of the sun and how they come down to earth. So for an example sentence, you could say, the sun's rays were shining through the dark clouds after the storm. That's always a very pretty picture. And then the sun said to rejoice in the time that the fir tree has. To rejoice in something means to take time to take pleasure in it, to celebrate it and be thankful for it. Basically, enjoy your life.
So rejoice your youth in your youth.
Yeah.
What does youth mean?
Well, we're about to find out. When we talk about youth, we're talking about the time when someone is young. You might notice that the first three letters, Y-O-U, are the same for this. So when you are young, you're in your youth. And it's when you've not really yet become an adult. And it's for this fir tree, probably it has not fully reached its mature stage when it's going to be very tall and very strong. And it's still able to kind of enjoy all this energy around it. So yeah, people often say rejoice in your youth means, you know, you have all this time, you have all this energy, have fun while you can. So an example sentence for youth, you could say, during her youth, Faye was a great athlete, but she quit sports after college.
Ray 这个名词呢，代表是光束。A ray of something， 那就是一束啊，通常后面加的是光线。那再来呢，我们刚刚还有听到 Kat 解释的 rejoice in something， 那就是为点点点而高兴。这里是要为你的 youth， 你的青春，你的年轻的时光而高兴。所以课文就说到，有一道光线告诉这棵树，你要为年轻而高兴，不要一直想要长大。
So, do you think that the fir tree listened?
Maybe not.
Nah, maybe it was just like, whatever. I just want to grow tall and I want to be cut down. When winter arrived, many young trees were cut down.
Okay, 冬天来了，那很多年轻的树也被砍倒了。
Oh, so the old trees were cut down in the autumn and then the young trees were cut down in the winter. So I wonder why. Again, the fir tree wondered what would become of them. So when you ask what will become of something, it means what will happen to it? What is its fate? Where is it going? What is its future? You can ask what will become of me? So what am I going to do? What's going to happen to me in the future? And you wonder this.
没错 wonder 这边当动词用啊，代表纳闷想知道某件事。那再来呢 what would 或是 what will or what has become of somebody or something， 那代表就是呢某事物或某人会怎么样，它将会变成什么样子。所以给同学们一个例句 I wondered what would become of him after being betrayed by his best friend 我纳闷他会在被最好的朋友背叛之后变成怎么样子。
So, of course, he's wondering what happens to them. And birds, again, have the answer because they can go everywhere. Birds said these trees would be brought into people's homes for Christmas and covered in beautiful decorations. Yeah, Christmas trees. So decorations here, of course, we know that Christmas trees are often hung up with stars and little balls of glass and lights and things like that. Those are decorations. A decoration is anything that's added to something else to make it prettier, to make it more attractive. So like jewelry is kind of decorations for humans.
Decoration 这个字的字尾呢，我们看到了 I-O-N， 它这个字尾啊，常常与动词连用，构成该动作结果的名词。所以 decorate 这个动词是装饰 ，decoration 就是装饰品，好，这个名词。那同类的还有像是 create 创造出来的东西，那就是 creation，或者是 invent 发明出来的东西，那就是 invention。
So what does the fir tree think about this? He thinks, wow, this is amazing. I would love that. The fir tree hoped for this future too.
这棵松树呢，它也想要这样的未来。
So he wants to become a Christmas tree, actually.
So he wants to be cut down.
Yeah, I guess he does.
Okay.
Maybe he doesn't know all of what that means yet. Maybe he'll like it.
Right, maybe he'll change his mind later.
Yeah, so we'll see. For now, that's the end of day 1. We're going to continue with the story in day 2. And for now, that means we're going to go to our For You chat.
For
you chat?
So our chat question for today is, what is something you look forward to when you become an adult? We're both adults.
Yeah, for us, it was in the past, right?
Yeah, let's say like when we were kids, what was something we looked forward to?
So when I was a kid, I looked forward to earning money, to starting to make a lot of money after I grow up.
Oh, and do you think that you've...
Because I wanted to buy things that I like and I want by myself instead of asking allowance from my parents.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I think I was looking forward to having an exciting job. Like I wanted to be, I think at different points I wanted to be a singer, a paleontologist, a writer, an artist, a violinist.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have actually been a few of those things and am a few of those things. Yay! But yeah, I think that was what I wanted when I grew up, to have a fun and cool job.
So when you were a kid, did you used to have a lot of dreams?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I still do.
Right.
So yeah, never stop dreaming and you'll never grow up. Exactly. So we'll see you for day 2 and we're going to continue the fir tree story tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Oh, bye-bye.
Vocabulary Review. Mighty. Edmund looked up at the mighty mountain and decided to climb to the top one day. Sigh. Ryan sighed deeply when his mom told him to do his homework, but he finished it without saying anything. Anxious. Maggie is anxious about the exam tomorrow, but she has studied a lot, so she should be fine. Wagon. We paid a driver to take us around the park in a wagon that was pulled by a horse. Ray. A ray of light came through the window and woke me up this morning. Youth. During his youth, Billy wanted to be a teacher, but when he grew up, he became a lawyer instead.
智慧小补帖
Fur. Mast. Rejoice in something.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net